Hi, hello guys. This is Vijay, biology lecturer from Ayalabad Junior College. As you know that we have started our NEET series. Based on that we are discussing about each and every chapter in detail and followed by the practice question. In that category today, we are going to discuss about NEET biology, unit 2 biological classification, kingdom, Pteridophytes. Pteridophytes in detail we are going to discuss in plant kingdom. And yesterday we discussed about the general characteristic features, and today we are going to discuss about the different classification of Pteridophytes. Let's start. Pteridophytes classification. Let's start. So the Pteridophytes belongs to the species. They are categorized into four different classes. So let us discuss each and every classes in detail. The first division is about Cilophyta. Cilophyta is the first division under the four different classes of Pteridophytes. Okay, let us talk about the Cilophyta and the group of species under this particular division. These are the most primitive type of land plants. Most of the plants that can be seen as land form, and these are the most primitive type of this pteridophytic type of species. And the body, the thallus of the plant, that looks very simple with green upright branches, many branches, and an underground stem system that is called a rhizome. Here we could able to see the stem which is undergoing for a type of modification, underground modification. That particular type of modification is called as rhizome. So where the stem that could store the reserve food, and these particular stems are to be used for edible purpose. Okay, then talking about the roots and leaves. The root system and the leaves systems that cannot be seen under this particular division type of the plants. The Cilophyta group of species, they do not have a proper root system or a well developed root system and a true leaf system. Okay, and these plants usually they grow in a warmer parts of the world. It's not moist places where the plant cannot be seen, but usually the plants can be seen throughout the world where the warmer area, warmer region, there we could able to see such a type of plants. Okay, under this particular division, the Cilophyta, the best example is Cilotum. So it is one of the best example when we are talking about this particular division Cilophyta. Now let us talk about the division 2. Yes. Now let us talk about the second division under the category of these Pteridophytes. The second category of the species being called as Lycopodophytae or Lycopodophyta. And here the plants, they are usually known as the club mosses. They usually form a small group of colony, and they grow a dense colony like small group or small gathering, and they are usually very small in size, and they grow closer to the ground in thick forest or the rainforest like. And the cones, it is a specialized structure that can be produced near the tip of the branches of this particular plant. The tip of the plant that could show the specialized structure called cones. Next, talking about the habitat where this particular kind of species can be seen. The plants usually grow abundantly, more in number, in mountainous part. Wherever the hills or the mountains can be seen around the world, there we could able to see such a type of the species, Lycopodophytae. And the best example for this category is the very well known example Selaginella and Lycopodium. These are the few examples, Lycopodium and Selaginella. So these are the few examples can be seen under this particular division 2 Lycopodophytae. Now let us talk about the division 3. Yes, now let us talk about this third division or this particular classification, the division 3 under the category of Pteridophytes. Okay, so this division 3, there we could able to see the species of the plant species comes under the category that is called Equisedophytae. So Equisedophytae is the third type of the division can be seen under the category of Pteridophytes. Now let us talk about these particular species. The division belongs to Equisedophytae. Now these are well known, these are also known as the horse-tail plants. Horse-tail plants, okay, looks like the similar structure of the horse tail. Okay, the plants usually, they could possesses the hollow, jointed, upright branches, and that could grow up from the underground stem. Okay, then talking about the leaves, the leaves of this particular species, they are not very large and green, and the holes of the small scale leaves that could develop from the node on the particular branches, and these particular plants, they could produce sporophylls that are organized in cone. Sporophylls are the specialized structure, and they are organized in the form of cone, and they will involve for the two different type of gametes in gametophytes, and these particular cones are developed at the tip of the upright branches. So these are the certain characteristic features of Equisedophytae division number 3 under the category of Pteridophytes. The best example for this particular division of plants are Equisetum. So these are the few examples can be seen under the division 3 belongs to the Pteridophyte. Now let us talk about the fourth division. Division 4. The fourth division of the category Pteridophytes. Yes, the fourth division of the category Pteridophytes classification. Yes, this is usually known as ferns. Ferns, which are also called as, this particular division is called as Filicophyta. Filicophyta are these also called as ferns. Okay, these particular species, what are the general characteristic features? This includes the true ferns. Say for example like Pteris, Nephrolepis, Adiantum. So these are the few examples under this particular division, Filicophytae or Filicophyta. And ferns, they have underground stem that could produce leaves. That leaves will grow on the above the surface of the ground, and the lower surface of the leaves that could produces a small brown dots. These are the special characteristic feature. And sori, which are the group of sporangia containing spores. The sporangia is like a structure that could produces a spores during this asexual mode of reproduction. And these sporangia will form into a group or a cluster, and this particular cluster or the group of sporangia is called as sori. So there we could able to see the number of spores. So these are the the different classification of Pteridophytes. Let us have a quick view about the Pteridophytes classification. The Pteridophytes classifications are usually divided for 4 different divisions. Division 1, Cilophyta, the best example is Cilotum. And division 2, Lycopodophyta or Lycopodophytae, and that includes for these are the few species. Lycopodium, Selaginella are the best example. Division 3, Equisedophyta or Equisedophytae and that includes Equisitum is one of the example, and division 4, that is a Filicophytae, that involves all the type of ferns, and the best example is Pteris. Pteris or Nephrolepis are the few examples. So this is what the classification of the types of Pteridophytes. Yes. So now let us talk about the life cycle in Pteridophytes. How good the entire species belongs to these Pteridophytes involved for turn its life cycle. In the life history of Pteridophytes, there is a typical heteromorphic alternation. Heteromorphic is nothing but there are two different phases could be seen during its entire life cycle. Say for example, these also called as the alternation of generation, and Pteridophytes also possesses alternation of generation during its life cycle. That involves for sporophytic and gametophytic generation, two different generations, and these two generations alternate with each other in a regular succession, and sporophyte to gametophyte, then gametophyte to sporophyte. This entire comprises the life cycle of the pteridophyte. Let us talk about this sporophytic or asexual generation. The sporophytic, which is also called as the asexual generation, that could be formed by the diploidic condition of the germ cells, and the majority of pteridophytes, they could produce only one kind of spores, similar type of spores, that is called homospores or homosporous condition, and they are gametophytic or exosporic, form thin plate cells, and they are confined to humid conditions. And the remaining members of the pteridophyte, they could bear two kind of spores, that is called heterosporous condition. The heterosporous conditions that involves for a larger spores like structure and a smaller spores like structure. The larger spores like structures are also called as the megaspores. The smaller the spores like structures, which are also called as the microspores, and these microspores, they could produce the male gametophyte or the male gametophytic cells, and the megaspores that could produce as a female gametophyte or female gametophytic cells. And the gametophytes of the heterosporous that could form initiate within the spore case, that is like endosporic nature, and the male gamete, they produced in the Anthridia, they are flagellated, they are motile, they could able to move in the water during the fertilization. And the sexual mode of reproduction can be seen in the pteridophytes are usually oogamous type. Oogamous is nothing but where the megaspores, which are also called as the female gametophyte, and they are large in size, they cannot move, they are sedentary, where the small or the microsporous, which are also called as the male gametes or male gametophytes, and these are produced from the Anthridia, and they possesses the flagella, they could involve for motility in the water. During fertilization, they could reach to the the megaspores or the female gametophytes, and very rarely the cytological alternation of generation is hampered due to the formation of gametophyte spores, apospori, which is also called as and they also sporophyte directly from the vegetative cells of the gametophyte without gametic union, apogamy, which is also called as, and the egg, they may develop apogamously into sporophyte, and in this process of the development of egg, that is called as the parthenogenesis. Now let us talk about the fern in detail, its morphological structure or the general characteristic feature, then followed by the sporophyll structure and type of reproduction under this category. Yes, fern. This is a very well known example of under the the category called pteridophytes, and this fern, which are also called as the Triopteris, these are the evergreen fern and common in moist wood or the deep ravines, shaded ravines, and it is usually found in the moist or the sandy places, and that could grow up to 2 feet in height. Now let us talk about the morphology or the general characteristic features of fern. The body of the fern, which is also called as the Triopteris, they are differentiated into root system, stem system and leaf system. So it is very well defined, the body or the thallus or the morphology of the fern. And leaves are fronts, which are the only aerial parts of the plant body, whereas the root system or the stem systems are underground modification. Okay, so the thallus or the body of the fern is very well defined into stem, root and leaves. Okay, so now let us talk about the particular part, stem. Yes, which is also called as rhizome. Yes, rhizome is a type of the underground modification of stem structure, and it is like an unbranched structure and obliquely placed, and which are also known as the root stock. The rhizome or the modification of stem structure, which are also called as root stock, and this rhizome is densely clothed with membranous scales or the ramenta, which is covered with, and persistent basal part of dead old leaves which are present on the older parts of the rhizome. Let us talk about the leaves. The leaves are usually large in structure, compound, and they looks like a branch. That is the reason which is also called as frond, and they are pinnately compound leaf. Pinnate is nothing but pinna shape, ear shape structure of the ear like structure can be seen, the leaf compound. No, that is what about the leaves. Then these leaves are usually completely or incompletely bipinnate structure. Completely pinnate structure or incompletely bipinnate structure or imparipinnate type of structure. So these are the different structure can be seen when talking about the nature of leaf. And the young leaves which are circinate. Circinate is nothing but coiled inwards on the upper surface. That can be seen like the banana, punch top of banana, the tip of the banana leaf when it is affected with certain fungal infection. The banana leaf, the tip of the banana leaf that undergoes for inside coil or inwards coil. So that type of structure can be seen in the young leaves. Then talking about this pinnae, the pinnae are usually smaller towards the base and apex, but longer at the center. The center region of the pinnae which shows longer, whereas towards the base and apex that looks smaller in size, and each pennule that could shows the presence of midrib. There is a midrib and furcate type of lateral veins can be seen, and each leaf that has a short stalk like structure that is called petiole. Petiole is nothing but a stem like structure that is attaching the leaf to the branch. And these pinnae develop on main stalk that is called as rachis. Rachis is the main stalk or the main stem like structure, from where these petioles are appear. Through the petiole the leaves started to appear. So the main branch or the main stalk is also called as rachis. And this is about the nature or structure of the pinnate or the pinnae or the leaf. And next talking about root system. The root system, adventitious type of roots which are present in irregular interval from the rhizome, and they are sparingly branched, and that could possesses the root cap. These are the general characteristic feature or the morphology of Triopteris or fern. Stem we discussed in detail, root we discussed in detail, and structure of leaves. Now let us talk about sporophyll. Sporophyll of fern or Triopteris. Yes. So sporophyll, these are nothing but leaflets with sporangia, they are called as sporophylls. The leaflet that could bear the structure sporangia, that sporangia could be able to produce the spores, this is called as sporophylls. And the sporangium that bears, so the sporangium bears large number of spores. There are many spores can contain these sporangia, and the spores are one type only, Homosporus type, and the sporangia are aggregated in group. The group of sporangia structures, that is called as sori, very very important. Sori are nothing but the group of sporangia or the the sporophyll structure present in pteridophytes, and the sori, they are formed under the surface of the leaflet. They are kidney shaped outline. In the beginning they are green in color when it started to growing, and later on it turns to brownish yellow color when it is reaching to the maturity. So this is about the sporophyll, structure of sporophyll of Triopteris or fern. Now let us talk about the sporangium. The structure of sporangium. Sporangium. Each sporangium, they consist of a stalk-like structure and the capsule-like structure. And the stalk, which is made up of 2 to 3 rows of elongated cells, and the capsule, which looks oval in shape or biconvex shape structure. And the capsule is composed of single layer of thin wall, that is called stomium, and except in annulus, the stomium cannot be seen. Now let us talk about the spores produced from the sporangia. How the spores are there, the structure of spores, nature of the spore. The spores are minute, very small and dark brown. They are tetrahedral in shape, tetrahedral, 4 faces can be seen. And the spores, which is usually made up of 2 different layer of walls, outer wall that is very thick, rough, and which is covered with exine, and each spore, which are uninucleate, single nucleus is present in each of the every spores. So this is about the structure of spore. Now let us talk about the prothallus. Structure of prothallus or prothallus. Structure of prothallus. Prothallus are green in color, heart shaped structure, and the margin is very thin and single layered, while the central part or the mid part of the prothallus, that is very thick, that could contain many layer of cells called cushion. And the prothallus that lies very flat on the ground, and that bears many unicellular rhizoids like structure on its lower surface, can be seen rhizoid like structure giving for support for this prothallus. On the under surface there we could able to see the prothallus 2 different type of cell, sex organs. They are the male sex organ and the female sex organ, like Anthridia, Archegonia. These are the 2 different sex organs can be seen under the structure of the prothallus. Now let us talk about Anthridium. The structure of Anthridia, they are very small and spherical in shape or sometimes oval in shape, and the wall that is made up of 4 different cells. The wall contain cap cell, 2 ring cells and a basal cell. This is about the Anthridium. Archegonium is a female sex organ, and this looks like a small flask like structure. The lower part that is swollen like venter, which is embedded in the prothallus, and the neck region of the Archegonium, they are made up of 4 vertical rows, and the Archegonium contain egg or the venter canal at the inside of the structure, and these egg are nothing but the female gametophyte or female gametophytic cell. Now let us talk about fertilization, how fertilization occurs in this particular type of species, pteridophytes. So fertilization occurs by means of the sexual reproduction called oogamous type. The antherozoids are the male gametes. They swim in water with the help of this flagella or cilia, and venter canal cell, next canal cell, they disintegrate in the archegonium. They produces mucilaneous structure or mucilase structure, which is also called as the malic acid, which is made up of. They attract by these chemicals many of these antherozoids are the male gametes or the sperm cells that could enter into the neck region, and they pass down into the venter, and one of the sperm that could fuse with the egg cell present in the archegonia, and they could develop into zygote, and by this way the fertilization occurs. It covers itself with a cell wall that is called the oospore. So by this method the fertilization occurs, and ferns or the mosses are usually considered to be amphibians among plants. The best example for amphibian plants are ferns and mosses. They could able to survive both in water and land habitat. Bryophytes, best example mosses, and Pteridophytes, best example fern. They need water for the movement of flagellated male gamete during the fertilization, and the amphibians also need external surface of water for male gamete to swim, to fuse with the female gamete which is present outside of their body. So till here we have discussed in detail about fern or Triopteris general characteristic feature, stem, structure of leaves, structure of roots, and sporophyll structure, sporangium, then spores, prothallus structure, antheridia, archegonia structure we have discussed in detail, and how fertilization occurs in fern, that also we have discussed in detail. Now let us talk about the difference between the two different terms, that is called Homosporous pteridophyte, Heterosporous pteridophyte. What is the meaning of these two different terms? Now Homosporous pteridophyte, which are also called as these type of species, they could bear all the spores. They are similar type, only one type of spore can be seen, that is called Homosporous pteridophyte, whereas the spores which shows two different structure like microspore and megaspore. Microspores are nothing but the male gametophytic cell, and the megaspores are nothing but the female gametophytic cell. So here we could able to differentiate two different type of cells, that is called Heterosporous pteridophyte. Now Sporangium, how that looks in Homosporous, means the spores they are formed in the side sporangium, that can be seen, whereas in the Heterosporous pteridophyte, the sporangium, they are the microspores are formed in microsporangia, megaspores are produced from the megasporangia. Two different sporangia can be seen. Now talking about the gamete, Homosporous, that could show the spores on the germination, that could form prothallus on which the gametes are formed, whereas in the Heterosporous, two different type of gametophytic structure are forming. Male gamete which are formed from the male gametophyte, female gamete that is formed from the female gametophyte. Two different type of gametophytic structure can be produced. And Homosporous pteridophyte, there are a few examples like Pteris, Triopteris, Fern, which is also called as, and Anteridium. These are the few examples. Whereas the Heterosporous type of pteridophyte, that involves for Selaginella salvinia are the best example. So till here we have discussed in detail about the entire the species belongs to the category Pteridophytes. So far guys, we have discussed in detail about the category belongs to Pteridophytes. In that category we have discussed the general characteristic feature and reproductive structure, and then fertilization, how it occurs. Then with one example like Fern or Triopteris, its case study we have discussed in detail, like general characteristic feature. Then we discussed fertilization and how far the fertilization occurs in detail. And this particular chapter, unit 2 biological classification, we would continue with one more subtopic. Until then, thank you guys.